Hi, my name is Steen, and I have three different kinds of visions. I have synesthetic visions, hypnagogic, and hypnopomic. And I've spoken about two of them before, but this is an update, and there's some stories. So as a synesthete, I'm used to seeing photisms. So I have colored numbers and letters, sound, smell, touch, and pain are all in color. They have shape and they move. And I use what I see to create my artwork. So this is me painting the sound of Toshinori Kondo's Red Trumpet. I had just put in the percussion instruments. One of the things I discovered a long time ago was a man named Kluver. He was an experimental psychologist at the University of Chicago. And he was very interested in knowing if people who were taking hallucinogenic drugs, in this particular case it was mescaline, did they see the same kinds of things. And he called them basic forms of perception, named form constants. So he took some mescaline, and he had a whole bunch of other people who did, and he said, can you illustrate what it is that you saw? There are three diagrams. This is the first one. I see a lot of these, but what you're seeing in the diagram is as accurate to what synesthetes see as a stick figure is an accurate representation of a human figure. As you can imagine, there's a lot missing. So I worked with an animator because I'm an artist but not an animator to try and show what it was that I was actually seeing. This was another of the Kluver form constants, and I see many of these. And I've worked from sculpture as well as painting, as well as digitally to recreate what I see. This was the third diagram, and this one always confused me because I saw some of the shapes, but I didn't see all of them until later. So this is what synesthesia looks like to me. And if you see these kind of comma-like forms, which are pure Kluverian, this is what it looks like. This happened during acupuncture. I'm lying on a futon stuck full of pins, looking somewhat like a human porcupine. And I'm watching this movie of these green shapes, which were visible as long as the needles were in. When the acupuncturist removed them, this is what I saw, just black. This was another one that I would see. And one of the things as an artist is if you have animation, you can show the movement. But if you don't, you have to kind of convey it on a single still piece, like a single canvas. If I'm watching something happening in acupuncture, this is kind of like what I'm seeing. Shapes are melding, they're moving, they're changing, it's capricious, I can't control it. Now here's an interesting story. In 2013, the famous playwright Peter Brook sent me a book. And he said, I'm basing a play on, going back there. I'm basing a play on a 11th century Sufi classic called Conference of the Birds. He said, read the book from the beginning and don't skip ahead. I did that. And 2 weeks later, I started to get what's known as hypnagogic visions. Hypnagogic vision is something that people see between being awake and falling asleep. So this is Peter and his collaborator, Marie-Hélène Estienne, and this is the book that I read. I started to see hypnagogic visions. They were totally different from my paintings. They formed from the center going out. They always had a black center. They moved, and they moved rapidly. And I started to think, what are they? Are they another form of synesthesia? There seemed to be some similarities, but there was no discernible trigger, or so I thought at the time. Understand that I started to see them 2 weeks after Peter sent me the book, Conference of the Birds, in 2013. I will also tell you that they stopped when Peter died in 2022. So I have a question. Was there a trigger? Another hypnagogic vision. So I started to ask myself, where do I see them? When do I see them? Well, I saw them before falling asleep. I saw them with my eyes shut. I asked 4 scientists that I knew. Jules said, okay, I understand what you're seeing, but I don't know why you're seeing them in the shower. Well, I didn't either. I asked Larry Marks. He said, well, there's a book that psychiatrists use to diagnose how crazy you are and what kind of crazy you happen to be. It's called the DSM. He said, I'm just telling you that because the real name is hypnagogic hallucinations. He said, I don't want you to get blindsided. The third person I asked was Daphne, who told me about the Charles Bonnet syndrome. And she said, people who are perhaps losing their vision or are perhaps blind will see these kinds of things. So I went to my eye doctor who said, your eyes are fine, but we need to change your prescription lenses. Fine. And the fourth person I asked was Noam. And Noam said, oh, I see them too. And that gave me permission to go ahead. So Noam, thank you, you gave me the sanction. I would see them with my eyes shut most of the time, but on a rare occasion I might see them if I was hugging a friend goodbye and just close my eyes. They were unlike synesthesia in many ways, but there were some similarities. So you see this diagram here, and I mentioned that there were some shapes I didn't see. And this was splitting them. And you can see that there's a line where they duplicate in both. So what do I see hypnagogically? Well, this is kind of like what would happen, but would actually happen a bit faster than that. They form from the center, and they move their subs going out. I made some observations. Unlike synesthesia, these were completely symmetrical. They changed quickly. Synesthetic perceptions, you have some time, you can look at it, you can sort of remember it. I had a lot of questions. What was triggering the visions? Where do I see them? Were they at all like my synesthetic photisms? No. Were they beautiful? Yes. Could I see through them? No, there was no transparency. Did I ever see them with my eyes open? Very, very rarely. And how did the visions change from one to the other? Well, they started in the center and worked their way out to the edges. And how fast did they change? 2 or 3 per second. That's fast. Did I see repeating patterns? Yes. If I was in the shower, sometimes I'd put a face cloth over my eyes to see whether the light from the shower might change my perception, but that didn't do anything. Were they always concentric? Yes. And have I ever seen both synesthetic and hypnagogic visions in the same experience? And the answer is rarely, but yes, I have. So here's kind of a brief synopsis of similarities and differences. Synesthetically, the background moves. Hypnagogically, it doesn't. Synesthetically, the forms appear quite randomly and capriciously. Hypnagogically, they form from the center out. Synesthetic, they're slower so you can observe things. With hypnagogic, you get kind of a burst and you try to remember the essence, the truth of what you've seen. Synesthetic are capricious with very little continuity, but hypnagogically they're rapid and there's a definite continuity. Synesthesia, I know what the trigger is. Hypnagogically, I didn't. In both cases, I can't control anything. Synesthetic colors, I always miss one color. For me, I don't see the color purple except on rare occasions. Hypnagogically, I see the entire rainbow, except that I don't see metallics hypnagogically, and I do synesthetically. Synesthetic colors are related to the trigger. I have no idea really what the trigger is, so hypnagogically there is no relationship. Both are the colors of light, not the colors that you see printed on fabric or on paper. The colors of light are the colors you see in your computer. They're very bright. Synesthetically, the colors will blend at their edges, and hypnagogically they don't. In both cases, though, there's no connection to any kind of a dream state. They are completely devoid of meaning. So if someone says you see a color, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. Sometimes the perceptions in both cases are very, very vivid and sometimes barely perceptible. The only time that I ever take drugs is in the dentist chair because I'm a coward. And I take nitrous oxide and that enhances what I see. So the only times that I've ever seen synesthetic perceptions that were symmetrical was under the influence of nitrous oxide. Whereas the hypnagogic images are symmetrical all the time, and both are fantastic. So I'd like to kind of give you a visual comparison between what I see synesthetically and what I see digitally. So this is a painting, and this is the one rare time that I've painted anything in purple. This is hypnagogic, so you see the difference is quite startling. Synesthetic, this is digital. Hypnagogic. Synesthetic. This is latest work where it's now a diary of what I experienced in the course of a day or several days. Thank you. Hypnagogic. So I wanted to know if other synesthetes experience hypnagogic visions. Did they look like mine? And I'm going into some uncharted territory now. So some people have said that they've seen synesthetic things. This particular person, when she sees two trains coming in opposite directions at the point where they intersect, is where she gets the vision. Some people report bubbles, each one moving independently, going in a particular direction. This is concentric circles. Interesting that there's a black center, and they're forming going in. And C.C. Hart was talking about the hypnagogic visions. She calls them multi-rayed and scintillating, and they have a radiant quality. And Ray Wynne-Turner is seeing it in terms of dots. So are there some similarities? Perhaps. I don't have enough visual information yet to say what they might be. So if you see hypnagogic visions, please send them to me. Okay, this one is working from like fractals, and again, forming from the center and moving out. So here's a story. In 22, Peter died. And what happened was, in 2021, he was sick. And up until 2013, until 2021, I was seeing hypnagogic visions. When Peter was sick, I would hear that he was having a good day, and he was having a bad day. And then I noticed that my visions were starting to change. When he died, they disappeared. So, is there a connection? I've been corresponding with a man in Turkey who knows a great deal about Sufism, and he says that there is a connection to what happens. I need to do a lot more research. Peter and I would talk. We'd talk a lot about synesthesia and about hypnagogia. And these are the visions that I got after he died. These are hypnopomic, and they occur when you're just waking up. And I find them very worrying because they are not pretty. They're spiky. They're both white and gray. There's no color. They form from the outsides in a linear fashion, and they move in. And I asked a couple of people who also have hypnopomic visions what theirs look like. And Christy Gurley made this wonderful description, which I love. She says, the movement was like metal shavings being pulled by a magnet. And Pau, it's wonderful, Pau documented the exact day and time when she saw these. So again, she's seeing things that are moving in waves. And Lauren Beersley, it's kind of, for me, more in a kind of combination of you see them hypnagogically and then you see it hypnopomically. It's like the vision is lasting a long time throughout the duration of your night. So I've made a comparison between the three different kinds of visions. So synesthetic, hypnagogic, and hypnopomic. When I see synesthetic visions, I'm filled with a really lovely, happy feeling. When I see hypnagogic, I have the same kind of feeling. But when I see the hypnopomic, I get worried. Thank you.
I discovered I'm supposed to be chairing the session. I hadn't had time to look at the piece of paper. I apologize for that. We have about 30 seconds for questions. Pat.
Hi, well, that was really so interesting and beautiful. I was wondering, is maybe you know, or maybe the scientists know, is seeing hypnagogic imagery still in the DSM-4? Is it still listed as a pathology?
I don't know, but I suspect our next speaker will know, because he's talking about hypnagogic experiences are more prevalent than synesthesia. Great sequel. Any other questions right now? Yes.
Thank you so much, Coach. Really interesting. And I mean, I do experience hypnagogic and hypnopomic, and I feel there's a real connection between my emotional state and that experience. I'm wondering, because you talked about that, I'm wondering if you feel like the emotional state supersedes the experience, or does the experience bring it as the emotions? So I feel when I'm having a hypnagogic experience, usually I am already euphoric, or already very sort of in that state of well-being, and it comes as part of my brain translating that, if that makes sense. But what about you? Do you feel
In that kind of dreamy state, I never wear many emotions when I'm watching the hypnagogic. But I'm enjoying them so much, and sometimes I wake myself up so I can go and create what I've just seen before I completely forget it. The hypnopomic, though, there's a feeling of just being uneasy, being a little bit worried, as if something is portending, except you have absolutely no idea what.
so that the hypnopomic experience starts to make you feel that way, rather than you feel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Last question, Janelle.
I think that's more of a comment, just
Okay.
reminding us that just because we have names for all of these doesn't mean they're well defined or well understood. And hypnagogic vision can be synesthetic or not. And at least the ones I told you about mine were synesthetic. They were very few and far between, but they were synesthetic and not. So for me, it was clear what the trigger was.
Okay, so these categories probably have very fuzzy boundaries in general. We'll have to save your question for coffee break. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.